take me forward 20 years. In a dream scenario, how does the region look?
In a dream scenario, economic development, which I think is what the Abraham Accords were about and what the burgeoning Saudi peace deal was about. And by the way, the burgeoning Saudi peace deal is the reason that Hamas did this at the behest of Iran. They were afraid of a regional realignment that would create a Sunni-Jewish alliance,
right,
oriented largely against the Shia power of Iran, which is spread through Lebanon, Syria, and now down into Hamasistan. The economic development is the only way to move forward for the region. That was the premise of the Abraham Accords. Again, it was the premise of the nascent Saudi peace deal. Israel would love to do that with the Palestinian Authority. They would love to do that with anyone governing the Palestinians to provide better economic conditions. I mean, one of the great ironies of all this is that 20% of Israel's population is Arab. The Arabs in Israel earn a far better income. They have far better GDP per capita than Arabs who are living under the Palestinian Authority or under the Gaza or under Hamas. And when you take polls of Israeli Arabs, many of whom are not particularly fond of the state of Israel, almost zero of them wish to actually relocate to any of these areas because economic development is economic development. The way out of this is that, but in order for that to happen, the people on the other side of the table have to actually agree that economic development is a worthwhile thing, is an end goal. And this goes back to the original point that I was making, is that we in the West, we believe that economic development worthwhile, that what we are all seeking is the same sort of peaceful, decent life where we leave each other alone and get to live our lives. I think that we all agree on that. But there's a group of people who absolutely do not agree with that, and they don't care about the level of economic development. They would rather live. I mean, Hamas would rather that its own citizens live in poverty and penury and orient themselves against the extermination of the Jews than that economic development even be allowed to take place. I mean, I know everyone in the Israeli government, I promise you, everyone in the Israeli government, right to left, would love nothing better than economic development of the people surrounding them so they don't have to send their sons and daughters to go fight and die in Gaza.
Do you believe in the concept of a two-state solution?
I mean, if there were a party on the other side to negotiate with, and if the possibility of a two-state solution was real, sure. I mean, but the question is, how realistic is that? Negotiations cannot be the cure-all. You have to have a partner on the other side of the table. The entire premise of the Oslo Accords is that you could take an actual terrorist by the name of Yasser Arafat. You could negotiate with him. You could make a deal with him, and this would magically cure the situation. Well, a deal is not capable of being cut with literally anyone. That's not the way any of this works. So in order for there to be any sort of long-term peace, including a Palestinian state, there would have to be a complete difference in leadership in these areas. And that would actually require Palestinian moderates to take the floor. The Palestinian Authority is not a moderate group. Islamic Jihad is a terrorist group. Hamas is a terrorist group. And until that changes, nothing's going to change. And by the way, there is the possibility of that change. If you had told me 10 years ago that there would be Saudi-Israeli normalization on the table, I would have laughed in your face. If you told me that Israel would have been able to cut peace deals with the UAE and with Morocco, I would have scoffed. And I think everyone would have scoffed. So there is that possibility. But again, you cannot make peace with a side that wants to murder you. That is not a possibility.
Well, on that point, all I would say to that is I'm an Irish Catholic, and we had the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And in the end, a peace deal was achieved, but it was achieved by people sitting down opposite people they knew had been killing civilians and killing people on their side. You even had the Queen meeting Martin McGuinness and Gerry Adams, who were in McGuinness's case, the former chief of staff of the IRA. He ordered some of the most appalling atrocities. I was actually at number 10 Downing Street when Tony Blair met McGuinness and Adams on the steps for the first time in 70 years as the members of Sinn Féin, and shook their hands. I was next in to see him in his office. And it was an extraordinary moment to watch. And it was a moment many people thought would never happen. Do you see any parallel there in terms of what could be achieved with Israel and Palestine?
Only if the leadership changes. Only if the leadership changes on the Palestinian side. That is the only way that happens. And again, the difference here is that the IRA had territorial ambitions. Hamas does not have territorial ambitions. They have genocidal ambitions. The Palestinian Authority has been offered multiple deals over multiple decades, and they have rejected, without counteroffers, virtually every deal they have ever been offered. Islamic Jihad is a terrorist group. Again, if the IRA was dedicated to the complete slaughter and eradication of every non-Irish Britisher in the UK, that would be the equivalent of Hamas. And that would not be a negotiating position because, again, could there be successful negotiations? It depends on the partner.
Right.
I mean, the example that you're using is the best example of sides that are incredibly far apart coming together. But here we are talking about one side that, simple premise, if Israel put down all of its guns tomorrow, every Jew in the region would be slaughtered. If Hamas put down all of its guns tomorrow, Israel would leave the Gaza Strip alone. It is that simple.